Oh, that was a flounder. Came out of the water. Now he definitely gave up his location. So they're busting these mullet coming over. There's a chance that they're feeding strictly up. And if that's the case, maybe I need to slow roll a swim bait over. Presentation matters. All right. I'm gonna pick up a swim bait here real quick. Pick up a swim bait. I'm gonna throw this Rapala Crush City Mare 4-inch swim bait. Looks just like a mullet. Toss that in there. I'll start just by hopping it. Real slow lifts. There he is. Bit it already. Look at that. Should be a flounder. There he is. Well, if that didn't just play out like we thought it would, y'all. I fished around that fish multiple times. As an example, 15 to 16-inch flounder, locked in on mullet. And my presentation was on the bottom. Real slow hopping on the bottom, surely running this little fatty Z I've been catching a lot of flounder on, right by his mean mug. And he didn't want it because it wasn't oriented to where he was feeding. He was feeding on mullet right under the surface, probably about 1.5 feet above him. I throw that swim bait in there, matches the mullet perfectly. I lift it up. As soon as I lift it up to the surface, he crushes it. Look at that. That's why I love fishing, y'all. The challenge in the moment, the puzzle, and it's super rewarding. That fish is rewarding because I had to figure it out. That was the difference, y'all. Coloration's the same. Almost the same length. A little bit thicker body. So what's the difference? Presentation. The Fatty Z with the Deeks jigs, dead spin, lots of bottom contact. Hugging the bottom, small little hops. That little blade is kicking up mud and silt, heads on the bottom, that's the design. It's very, very effective. But that fish wanted a swim bait, a mullet up in the water column, up where they were looking up feeding on those mullet, busting those mullet, coming out of the water, gave me all the visual you could ever want. Doesn't always play out like that. Hey y'all, it's Kyle with Inshore Edge. Today's episode is about flounder fishing and our marsh and our estuaries, specifically here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but you can use this anywhere on the East Coast and in the Gulf Coast. So flounder, as we all know, if you don't, you will, they move offshore in the wintertime to spawn, and then they start working their way back up in the springtime. For many locations on the Gulf Coast, they take their time, long story short, and they work slowly from the outer beach areas, the sounds, the outer bays, and out front, feeding, and ultimately just feeding where the bait fish are. That's mostly where our pogies and mullet and things are out there. But as we get deeper into the summer, they start staging and they start moving up our estuaries, our bays, our bayous here in the Gulf, creek mouths, things like that. Ultimately, following, in our case, menhaden and pogies, which those are indigenous to the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, and then also getting ready for the shrimp run, the shrimp migration in the fall as shrimp start pouring out of our marsh. And so the question is, when do I start looking for those flounder up in our bays in the summer? And the deal is, if you start too early, sometimes the fishing can be kind of sporadic, but there are things to look for. There's timing to it, and that's different every year. But generally speaking, you got to look for certain things. And so I was pretty happy to be able to show that in this video that y'all are going to see, what to look for, how flounder ambush, and what areas they prefer to feed at, and based off what kind of bait's in that area. And I'll also go over some of the lures. So kick back, hope you enjoy this one, and hope you can have a few takeaways to help you get more flounder in the boat. Maybe. That's a flounder. That's a flounder. That's a good one. There we go. On the board. On the board, right where he should be. Little bayou mouth right there, a little point. He was right off that point, waiting for bait fish to go in because the current is going in. Good flounder. It's on that Deeks Jigs dead spin, little Ned head, little blade on it, Z-Man Fatty Z. Fished on the bottom, and that Z-Man Elastec keeps the tail straight up, and then that jig head style, it's kind of a blockhead, it stands straight up, or has a tendency to stand straight up. That little combo is turning out to be pretty deadly for flounder. There's no playing with it. There's another one right now. There we go. Let him take it. There he is. It's another nice flounder. Deadly little combo. Another good one. Take it, man. Take it. 2 in a row. I talked to y'all about a little spot like this. Never fished it before, but it has all the trademarks of a good spot. They eat it like that, and they eat it fast. There's no bump, no nothing like flounder will do. They're just inhaling it on the first take. I would bet it's that blade. Flounder, mouth a little shallow bayou, right on a point. Those fish are sitting right there, probably facing me as the bait comes around the bayou, or around the point into the bayou. It's an ambush spot, and it's why it holds 2 flounder, maybe more. Another nice thing about that Elastec, doesn't get torn up. Same bait, fished for a long time. When I cast it out, it's another little lesson. When you got the wind putting a bow in your line, wherever that bow is laying, that's going to be the track of your bait, no matter where you cast it. Even though that's not a straight angle back to you, it's going to follow that bow. Sometimes I don't care. Sometimes I'll lay that line down to make it straight so it comes back to me, because it'll be important, because often I want the track of that lure to go to a certain area, not where the bow of the line is. Now, very shallow bayou entrances like this. It's flat out here, it's shallow up there. Yes, that point is a good spot, but I don't just give up if I don't catch any more on that point, because a lot of times, again, shallow bayou mouths, flounder will sit right in the middle. Depends on where the bait's moving through. They're just as comfortable feeding right there in the middle in 2 feet as on that point in 2 feet, if the food source is there. Depends on where the mullet moving through or tracking. A lot of times they'll hug those corners and hug the grass line going in. It's just safer for them. So that's why you have flounder sitting there. But I see some mullet shaking over there on that other point, so we're gonna check that one out too. Before we move on, I notice there's like a secondary point right here leading into the bayou. So I'm gonna check that out too. There it is. I smoked it. That's a nice flounder. Yeah, y'all, it's quite a few fish in a row now that it's like just boom. No tap tap, no grab, they just chew it. Nice flounder. Yes, sir. That is such a good combo, y'all. That's a nice fish there. Look at this. First tap down the hatch. Look at that. That is a dadgum good jig head. Look at that. That blade is creating, I'm convinced now, it's about 8 flounder. That blade is causing them to just suck it up the first time. The level of aggression they bring. And that is awesome for flounder fishing. So, bayou, 2 primary points, however you want to word it. Primary is on the front of the bayou. A secondary, or you want to call it a primary, but regardless, it's another point coming in. Sure enough, that fish was sitting right there. Sitting right in the pathway as a bait fish follow the grass line into the bayou. And literally, mullet shimmering right where I caught him. He was in a good spot. They know what they're doing. They know where to be. Might be a little confused or wondering why I've got a 5-inch worm on a small jig head. Well, this is kind of the shaky head concept in the bass world. It's responsible for millions of bass. Confident saying million. Won many tournaments, been around for a long time. It's just presents a stand-up worm on the bottom, kind of shaking. Easy meal, bottom line. And it's been very effective. I got a video from several months ago where I was able to catch some nice reds and trout and things like that. So this is just the Z-Man Fatty Z. It's one of their 5-inch. It's more of a Senko style worm, but it's got a little bit of a different shape. Anyways, that buoyancy, the Lastec for the Z-Man floats, and so it stays straight up. Really nice shaky head presentation. Now with Deke's jigs, dead spin, the extra deal here, it's not just the jig head, it's that blade, that little flashy willow leaf blade. And the Flounder love that blade. And so much that they're having no issues. Even the smaller ones are sucking in a 5-inch bait on first bite without any issues. Word of advice: when you cast your bone spinning gear, a great way to avoid the majority of your loops and bird's nests and things like that, wind knot, is when you cast, flip your bail. Flip your bail as the lure, just as the lure's hitting the water, instead of turning, engaging your reel to flip your bail. Basically, when you turn and you flip your bail by engaging your reel, it, lack of a better word, it leaves like about 5 inches of slack there that just gets kind of lazily thrown or inefficiently thrown on the spool. And after several casts, that line, that fish here, will cause a loop. There he is. Little flounder. I don't think he's a big one. He's swimming over there. Probably keep. Maybe. It's gonna be borderline. Let's see here. 12 inches in Mississippi. He's right at 12. I'm not keeping him. Shrinkage is a thing. Plus, you can get about one decent fillet off him. Like I talked to one of my previous videos, I had an outgoing tide. Much of the water had dropped out of the marsh, and I was catching a lot of my flounder on the slope. That's where the bait had moved. It's where the water had moved. It's where the flounder had moved. On the flip side here, I've got the top of an incoming tide. It's a very high tide for our area. I've got all these pogies down here flashing, mullet all up against the grass line. And so no surprise, I'm finding the flounder right up against the grass line. So what's your common denominator there? Right, y'all can put 2 and 2 together. Water and bait. And really, it's just bait, right? If there was just a foot of water up there on a dead low tide, and for some reason the bait was going to go against its nature and what it does, and got up close, well, that's what the flounder are going to be. So it's really what the bait are doing based off the water levels. That's kind of the key. There he is. It's a nice trout there. Oh, that gum. That's a surprise. Holy smokes. That's a surprise. That is a surprise in our waters. That gum 17, 18-inch trout. She was absolutely where she should be. Don't get me wrong. She's on a feeding flat. Feeding flat. But why this girl ain't out spawning, I have no idea. I'm not saying an 18-inch trout is a big trout, but that's a spawning trout. And spawning trout don't hang out in the back bay when it's time to spawn. They go out to our salty barrier islands. or at the least out front where we have more salt. I'm not way up in the bay, but I'm enough to where I'm like maybe 10 to 15 parts per million, parts per thousand salinity. Not enough to spawn by any means. There it is. It's floundered. It's floundered. Oh, buddy. I might keep. Got a point coming up. I like to slow the wind in my back. I like to slow my approach a little bit. You get twice as many casts in there. Front side, back side. You can actually see when you have that breeze creating ripples on the water. You can see the current having to move out around the point. It's just another example of why points are so good. When you can see the current causing the break, that creates an ambush point. The bait don't see, when they move around that corner, what's waiting for them. They don't sense it, they don't see it until it's too late. A little tip I just realized, looking right at this point. Perception, angles, visual. I can't tell it's a point right now, looking straight at it. But when I was coming along the shoreline, it was a very prominent point. So when you're looking for areas, looking for new areas, especially long grass lines that have multiple small points, you need to make sure you visualize that from a different angle, kind of lengthwise, looking parallel down the shoreline, and you'll see those points. If you're just like passing by and you're looking right at it, you won't see all those little points. It's pretty important. So, there's one. Come on, flounder. There it is. Ah, that hurts. Right where he should have been, right on that point. Dang it. Come on, eat it. There it is. There it is. Good one? Oh, it's a nice one. There we go. There we go. Nice fish there. Little mini points. Those call them secondary points, tertiary points. They're back from the big point. Good old fish though. It's just a little irregularity on a shoreline. Again, it's all about what the regularity does. It makes the bait fish go around. It makes them go around a corner. All right, y'all, as always, we got a little summary of the video. I won't belabor too many of the points that I made during the video also, but like, again, I just try to, if there's a takeaway you could take, these would be it. All right, so as you saw, I was able to locate the flounder in our system. We're mid-July, basically on a high tide up around a lot of marsh grass. And so we have these little marsh islands that kind of dot our waterway. They're shallow flats essentially, and they have all kinds of little grass points, little ambush areas, and I won't belabor that. We talked about that a lot in the video. And so that is what allowed me to find the bulk of the flounder in the system. I was not able to find much on docks and things like that. Generally speaking, for me, I usually find more of that early spring or late fall. But anyhow, so the reason they were there is because of pogies, or menhaden is the proper name, pogies is the slang. And they're about 3 inches long right now, and they're growing and they're moving into our system. So that's the big key, is they're moving into our bay systems, and eventually they'll get way up our bayous and up our rivers by fall. And so that's kicked off. And so on a high tide, these pogies love to get shallow. There's a lot of algae and plankton and things that they filter feed that's in the water column, especially up shallow, on those shallow mud flats that are often just barren, like mud, no water on them, but on a high tide you get 2-3 feet and you'll see it's just pods of pogies all up in there. Well, pogies, unlike mullet, are slower moving, they're smaller, they're bite size. Flounder love them. And so sure enough, I was able to see that flounder were positioning exactly in the best locations to ambush these pogies. And so you could literally watch, of course I like to fish and watch at the same time, who doesn't? But you can watch and see exactly where these pogies were maneuvering along a grass shoreline. And then from there, you could kind of guess this point, that point, this little cutout, there's probably a flounder there, and sure enough, there was. And so definitive pattern right now, definitely something you can look for. The lures I used, pretty much just use one. And it's a jig head that is just fantastic for flounder fishing. I haven't been using it long, but I've caught already, I think, well over 10 flounder on this thing. Most of those you'll see in the video. It's made by Deeks Jigs, D-E-E-K-S. I'll put the link in the video at the end, the comments. I'll put it all over the place. And it's called the Dead Spin. So all it is like a Ned head, a block head, about a 2/0 hook on it. It's a Mustad Ultra Point X2, so it's a stout hook. And it's got that little blade on there. I love that little blade. I really believe that little blade is getting me a lot more bites when flounder fishing. And not only, and you'll see me mention this in the video, not only bites, it's the way they're hitting it. They're sucking it up. A lot of times when flounder fishing, I'd say over half the time, I have to wait for the flounder. He'll grab it. I'll give him some time. You'll see in my other videos, I give him a few seconds, let them, a lot of times they'll grab it and then they need to inhale it and get it fully in their mouth. So when you set the hook drives into the mouth. With this, I didn't have to do that at all. They're just sucking it down. I chose the Parrot, kind of like I've also mentioned, a shaky head style. This is a Z-Man Fatty Z. It's a 5-inch kind of worm style bait. You see it's got a little taper down there. It adds a little bit more action to the tail. Fantastic bait. I've caught a lot of bass on this over the years. Smallmouth, largemouth, whatever. You can fish it a number of different ways. So I just threw it on this jig head. And so it's a Elastec material, which is very buoyant. And so when you hop it along the bottom, essentially, that is what it looks like. That tail sticks straight up, and you can see in the video, I'm just barely bumping it. Bottom contact, shallow water, I don't have to let it sink much. So I'm just kind of bumping it back, and it's just, that's essentially what it looks like. That little head is stirring up mud. That blade is just in that mud and that silt flashing, hopping, and it's just, they stroke it. And I think a big part of that is I'm almost always on the bottom with it. Versus if you're fishing a swim bait or you're slow rolling a swim bait for flounder, a lot of times you have these hops where it's above them, they'll come up and grab, and sometimes they'll just miss and get half of it. But when it's like crawling by them, they don't miss. I think they just turn and suck it up. And so that also probably helps, along with some of the other things, like I mentioned, the blade. And using Elastec material, it's very, very flexible, as you can see. I mean, put that into a little wad real quick, and so that's often how you'll find it in their mouth. Just boom, they suck it up. So anyhow, deadly combo. It was readily apparent. Fantastic combo for flounder. It's going to be hard to put this thing down. Again, I'll put the link for Deeks Jigs. He's got a website and Instagram. You can reach out to him. He can make these there's a lot of custom aspects he can make for you. Just a fantastic little bait, heavy duty, excellent. And then I'll also put the link for the Z-Man Fatty Z. You can get this anywhere. It's a very popular bait. They have 100 different styles, but this is one of the ones very popular. All right, well, I hope you got some takeaways for that. Helps you ultimately catch flounder. That's my goal. Help you to get these delicious tasting fish, as many in the cooler as you can. This is the pattern right now. I said mid-July for you folks here on the Mississippi coast. Again, it's probably likely the case anywhere on the Gulf Coast, and on southeast Atlantic side, also the same. Our temps and our seasonality is very similar, and so it only gets better from here. These flounder are going to start flooding in, staging even more, and so these areas that I'm talking about will also start to hold shrimp, and the fishing gets better. So the point being, though, is you can get on it now, you can fill a cooler, and get a head start all the way into the fall. All right, again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you watching these videos. Don't forget to subscribe to YouTube, and then also follow on Facebook. For the most part, I put the same on both. YouTube Shorts. If you don't know about YouTube Shorts, that's where you can catch my reels that are on Facebook, the shorter stuff where I try to add a little bit of education in a small 1 to 3 minute clip. Also, I'm on Instagram. You can check me out there. If you can share my stuff also, fantastic. If you've got some people who maybe don't subscribe or not following me, and they love to fish, especially if they love to fish inshore saltwater, send them my way. Let them know about me, share, and I'm just trying to grow as much as possible, trying to get the word out. It's slow growth when education is the bulk of your content. It's just kind of the way social media is. But you guys can definitely help me grow by sharing and definitely liking, subscribing, and following yourself if you haven't already done so. All right, this has been Kyle with Inshore Edge. Appreciate your time. We'll see you next time.